jjstylesrocks. Read the review. Birth. If Leoli had been born in the highlands of northwest Laos, where her parents and 12 of her brothers and sisters were born, her mother would have squatted on the floor of the house that her father had built from axe-hewn planks thatched with bamboo and grass. The floor was dirt, but it was clean. Her mother, Phwa, sprinkled it regularly with water to keep the dust down and swept it every morning and evening with a broom she had made of grass and bark. She used a bamboo dustpan, which she had also made herself, to collect the feces of the children who were too young to defecate outside, and emptied its contents in the forest. Even if Phwa had been a less fastidious housekeeper, her newborn babies wouldn't have gotten dirty, since she never let them actually touch the floor. She remains proud to this day that she delivered each of them into her own hands, reaching between her legs to ease out the head and then letting the rest of the body slip out onto her bent forearms. No birth attendant was present, though if her throat became dry during labor, her husband, now Cow, was permitted to bring her a cup of hot water, as long as he averted his eyes from her body. Because Phwa believed that moaning or screaming would thwart the birth, she labored in silence, with the exception of an occasional prayer to her ancestors. She was so quiet that although most of her babies were born at night, her older children slept undisturbed on a communal bamboo pallet a few feet away, and woke only when they heard the cry of their new brother or sister. After each birth, now Cow cut the umbilical cord with heated scissors and tied it with string. The Phwa washed the baby with water she had carried from the stream, usually in the early phases of labor, in a wooden and bamboo pack bard strapped to her back. Phwa conceived, carried, and bore all her children with ease, but had there been any problems, she would have had recourse to a variety of remedies that were commonly used by the Hmong, the hill tribe to which her family belonged. If a Hmong couple failed to produce children, they could call in Tsiv Nib, a shaman who was believed to have the ability to enter a trance, summon a posse of helpful familiars, ride a winged horse over the 12 mountains between the earth and the sky, cross an ocean inhabited by dragons, and, starting with bribes of food and money and, if necessary, working up to a necromantic sword, negotiate for his patient's health with the spirits who lived in the realm of the unseen. A Tsiv Nib might be able to cure infertility by asking the couple to sacrifice a dog, a cat, a chicken, or a sheep. After the animal's throat was cut, the Tsiv Nib would string a rope bridge from the doorpost to the marriage bed, over which the soul of the couple's future baby, which had been detained by a malevolent spirit called a dab, could now freely travel to earth. One could also take certain precautions to avoid becoming infertile in the first place. For example, no Hmong woman of childbearing age would ever think of setting foot inside a cave, because a particularly unpleasant kind of dab sometimes lived there who liked to eat flesh and drink blood and could make his victim sterile by having sexual intercourse with her. When a Hmong woman became pregnant, she could ensure the health of her child by paying close attention to her food cravings. If she craved ginger and failed to eat it, her child would be born with an extra finger or toe. If she craved chicken flesh and did not eat it, her child would have a blemish near its ear. If she craved eggs and did not eat them, her child would have a lumpy head. When a Hmong woman felt the first pangs of labor, she would hurry home from the rice or opium fields, where she had continued to work throughout her pregnancy. It was important to reach her own house, or at least the house of one of her husband's cousins, because if she gave birth anywhere else a dab might injure her. A long or arduous labor could be eased by drinking the water in which a key had been boiled, in order to unlock the birth canal, by having her family array bowls of sacred water around the room and chant prayers over them, or, if the difficulty stemmed from having treated an elder member of the family with insufficient respect, by washing the offended relative's fingertips and apologizing like crazy until the relative finally said, "I forgive you." Soon after the birth, while the mother and baby were still lying together next to the fire pit, the father dug a hole at least 2 feet deep in the dirt floor and buried the placenta. If it was a girl, her placenta was buried under her parents' bed. If it was a boy, his placenta was buried in a place of greater honor, near the base of the house's central wooden pillar, in which a male spirit, a domestic guardian who held up the roof of the house and watched over its residents, made his home. The placenta was always buried with the smooth side, the side that had faced the fetus inside the womb, turned upward, since if it was upside down, the baby might vomit after nursing. If the baby's face erupted in spots, that meant the placenta was being attacked by ants underground, and boiling water was poured into the burial hole as an insecticide. In the Hmong language, the word for placenta means jacket. It is considered one's first and finest garment. When a Hmong dies, his or her soul must travel back from place to place, retracing the path of its life geography, until it reaches the burial place of its placental jacket, and puts it on. Only after the soul is properly dressed in the clothing in which it was born can it continue its dangerous journey, past murderous dabs and giant poisonous caterpillars, around man-eating rocks and impassable oceans, to the place beyond the sky where it is reunited with its ancestors and from which it will someday be sent to be reborn as the soul of a new baby. If the soul cannot find its jacket, it is condemned to an eternity of wandering, naked and alone. Because the Lees are among the 150,000 Hmong who have fled Laos since their country fell to communist forces in 1975, they do not know if their house is still standing, or if the 5 male and 7 female placentas that now cow buried under the dirt floor are still there. They believe that half of the placentas have already been put to their final use, since 4 of their sons and 2 of their daughters died of various causes before the Lees came to the United States. The Lees believe that someday the souls of most of the rest of their family will have a long way to travel, since they will have to retrace their steps from Merced, California, where the family has spent 15 of its 17 years in this country, to Portland, Oregon, where they lived before Merced, to Honolulu, Hawaii, where their airplane from Thailand first landed, to 2 Thai refugee camps, and finally back to their home village in Laos. The Lee's 13th child, Mai, was born in a refugee camp in Thailand. Her placenta was buried under their hut. Their 14th child, Leah, was born in the Merced Community Medical Center, a modern public hospital that serves an agricultural county in California's Central Valley, where many Hmong refugees have resettled. Leah's placenta was incinerated. Some Hmong women have asked the doctors at MCMC, as the hospital is commonly called, if they could take their babies' placentas home. Several of the doctors have acquiesced, packing the placentas in plastic bags or take-out containers from the hospital cafeteria. Most have refused, in some cases because they have assumed that the women planned to eat the placentas, and have found that idea disgusting, and in some cases because they have feared the possible spread of hepatitis B, which is carried by at least 15% of the Hmong refugees in the United States. Phua never thought to ask, since she speaks no English, and when she delivered Leah, no one present spoke Hmong. In any case, the Lee's apartment had a wooden floor covered with wall-to-wall carpeting, so burying the placenta would have been a difficult proposition. When Leah was born, at 7:09 p.m. on July 19, 1982, Phua was lying on her back on a steel table, her body covered with sterile drapes, her genital area painted with a brown betadine solution, with a high-wattage lamp trained on her perineum. There were no family members in the room. Gary Thwilson, a family practice resident who did the delivery, noted in the chart that in order to speed the labor, he had artificially ruptured Phua's amniotic sac by poking it with a foot-long plastic amni-hook, that no anesthesia was used, that no episiotomy, an incision to enlarge the vaginal opening, was necessary, and that after the birth, Phua received a standard intravenous dose of Pitocin to constrict her uterus. Dr. Thwilson also noted that Leah was a healthy infant, whose weight, 8 pounds 7 ounces, and condition were appropriate for gestational age, an estimate he based on observation alone, since Phua had received no prenatal care, was not certain how long she had been pregnant, and could not have told Dr. Thwilson even if she had known. Phua thinks that Leah was her largest baby, although she isn't sure, since none of her 13 elder children were weighted at birth. Leah's APGAR scores, an assessment of a newborn infant's heart rate, respiration, muscle tone, color, and reflexes, were good. 1 minute after her birth she scored 7 on a scale of 10, and 4 minutes later she scored 9. When she was 6 minutes old, her color was described as pink and her activity as crying. Leah was shown briefly to her mother. Then she was placed in a steel and plexiglass warmer, where a nurse fastened a plastic identification band around her wrist and recorded her footprints by inking the soles of her feet with a stamp pad and pressing them against a newborn identification form. After that, Leah was removed to the central nursery, where she received an injection of vitamin K in one of her thighs to prevent hemorrhagic disease, was treated with 2 drops of silver nitrate solution in each eye, to prevent an infection from gonococcal bacteria, and was bathed with Safeguard soap. Phua's own date of birth was recorded on Leah's delivery room record as October 6, 1944. In fact, she has no idea when she was born, and on various other occasions during the next several years she would inform MCMC personnel, through English-speaking relatives such as the nephew's wife who had helped her check into the hospital for Leah's delivery, that her date of birth was October 6, 1942, or, more frequently, October 6, 1926. Not a single admitting clerk ever appears to have questioned the latter date, though it would imply that Phua gave birth to Leah at the age of 55. Phua is quite sure, however, that October is correct, since she was told by her parents that she was born during the season in which the opium fields are weeded for the second time and the harvested rice stalks are stacked. She invented the precise day of the month, like the year, in order to satisfy the many Americans who have evinced an abhorrence of unfilled blanks on the innumerable forms the Lees have encountered since their admission to the United States in 1980. Most Hmong refugees are familiar with this American trait and have accommodated it in the same way. Now Cao Li has a first cousin who told the immigration officials that all 9 of his children were born on July 15, in 9 consecutive years, and this information was duly recorded on their resident alien documents. When Leah Lee was released from MCMC, at the age of 3 days, her mother was asked to sign a piece of paper that read, "I certify that during the discharge procedure I received my baby, examined it and determined that it was mine. I checked the identiband parts sealed on the baby and on me and found that they were identically numbered 5043 and contained correct identifying information." Since Fwa cannot read and has never learned to recognize Arabic numerals, it is unlikely that she followed these instructions. However, she had been asked for her signature so often in the United States that she had mastered the capital forms of the 7 different letters contained in her name, Fwa Yang. The Yangs and the Lees are among the largest of the Hmong clans. The other major ones are the Ches, the Chengs, the Hangs, the Hers, the Qs, the Los, the Muas, the Thaos, the Vus, the Siongs, and the Vangs. In Laos, the clan name came first, but most Hmong refugees in the United States use it as a surname. Children belong to their father's clan. Women traditionally retain their clan name after marriage. Marrying a member of one's own clan is strictly taboo. Fwa's signature is no less legible than the signatures of most of MCMC's resident physicians in training, which, particularly if they are written toward the end of a 24-hour shift, tend to resemble EEGs. However, it has the unique distinction of looking different each time it appears on a hospital document. On this occasion, Fu Yang was written as a single word. One A is canted to the left and one to the right, the Y looks like an X, and the legs of the N undulate gracefully, like a child's drawing of a wave. It is a credit to Fwa's general equanimity, as well as characteristic desire not to think ill of anyone, that although she found Leah's birth a peculiar experience, she has few criticisms of the way the hospital handled it. Her doubts about MCMC in particular, and American medicine in general, would not begin to gather force until Leah had visited the hospital many times. On this occasion, she thought the doctor was gentle and kind. She was impressed that so many people were there to help her, and although she felt that the nurses who bathed Leah with safeguard did not get her quite as clean as she had gotten her newborns with Laotian stream water, her only major complaint concerned the hospital food. She was surprised to be offered ice water after the birth, since many Hmong believe that cold foods during the postpartum period make the blood congeal in the womb instead of cleansing it by flowing freely, and that a woman who does not observe the taboo against them will develop itchy skin or diarrhea in her old age. Fwa did accept several cups of what she remembers as hot black water. This was probably either tea or beef broth. Fwa is sure it wasn't coffee, which she had seen before and would have recognized. The black water was the only MCMC-provided food that passed her lips during her stay in the maternity ward. Each day, Now Cow cooked and brought her the diet that is strictly prescribed for Hmong women during the 30 days following childbirth: steamed rice, and chicken boiled in water with 5 special postpartum herbs, which the Lees had grown for this purpose on the edge of the parking lot behind their apartment building. This diet was familiar to the doctors on the labor and delivery floor at MCMC, whose assessments of it were fairly accurate gauges of their general opinion of the Hmong. One obstetrician, Raquel Arias, recalled, "The Hmong men carried these nice little silver cans to the hospital that always had some kind of chicken soup in them and always smelled great. Another obstetrician, Robert Small, said, "They always brought some horrible stinking concoction that smelled like the chicken had been dead for a week." Fwa never shared her meals with anyone, because there is a postpartum taboo against spilling grains of rice accidentally into the chicken pot. If that occurs, the newborn is likely to break out across the nose and cheeks with little white pimples whose name in the Hmong language is the same as the word for rice. Some Hmong parents in Merced have given their children American names. In addition to many standard ones, these have included Kennedy, Nixon, Pajama, Guitar, Maine, after Merced's Main Street, and, until a nurse counseled otherwise, Baby Boy, which one mother, seeing it written on her son's hospital papers, assumed was the name the doctor had already chosen for him. The Lees chose to give their daughter a Hmong name, Leah. Her name was officially conferred in a ceremony called a Buletinplig, or soul calling, which in Laos always took place on the third day after birth. Until this ceremony was performed, a baby was not considered to be fully a member of the human race, and if it died during its first 3 days it was not accorded the customary funerary rites. This may have been a cultural adaptation to the 50% infant mortality rate, a way of steeling Hmong mothers against the frequent loss of their babies during or shortly after childbirth by encouraging them to postpone their attachment. In the United States, the naming is usually celebrated at a later time, since on its third day a baby may still be hospitalized, especially if the birth was complicated. It took the Lee family about a month to save enough money from their welfare checks, and from gifts from their relatives' welfare checks, to finance a soul-calling party for Leah. Although the Hmong believe that illness can be caused by a variety of sources including eating the wrong food, drinking contaminated water, being affected by a change in the weather, failing to ejaculate completely during sexual intercourse, neglecting to make offerings to one's ancestors, being punished for one's ancestors' transgressions, being cursed, being hit by a whirlwind, having a stone implanted in one's body by an evil spirit master, having one's blood sucked by a dab, bumping into a dab who lives in a tree or a stream, digging a well in a dab's living place, catching sight of a dwarf female dab who eats earthworms, having a dab sit on one's chest while one is sleeping, doing one's laundry in a lake inhabited by a dragon, pointing one's finger at the full moon, touching a newborn mouse, killing a large snake, urinating on a rock that looks like a tiger, urinating on or kicking a benevolent house spirit, or having bird droppings fall on one's head. By far the most common cause of illness is soul loss. Although the Hmong do not agree on just how many souls people have, estimates range from 1 to 32, the Lees believe there is just one. There is a general consensus that whatever the number, it is the life soul, whose presence is necessary for health and happiness, that tends to get lost. A life soul can become separated from its body through anger, grief, fear, curiosity, or wanderlust. The life souls of newborn babies are especially prone to disappearance, since they are so small, so vulnerable, and so precariously poised between the realm of the unseen, from which they have just traveled, and the realm of the living. Babies' souls may wander away, drawn by bright colors, sweet sounds, or fragrant smells. They may leave if a baby is sad, lonely, or insufficiently loved by its parents. They may be frightened away by a sudden loud noise, or they may be stolen by a dab. Some Hmong are careful never to say aloud that a baby is pretty, lest a dab be listening. Hmong babies are often dressed in intricately embroidered hats. Phwa made several for Leah, which, when seen from a heavenly perspective, might fool a predatory dab into thinking the child was a flower. They spend much of their time swaddled against their mothers' backs in cloth carriers called nyas. Phwa made Leah several of these too, that have been embroidered with soul-retaining motifs, such as the pigpen, which symbolizes enclosure. They may wear silver necklaces fastened with soul-shackling locks. When babies or small children go on an outing, their parents may call loudly to their souls before the family returns home, to make sure that none remain behind. Hmong families in Merced can sometimes be heard doing this when they leave local parks after a picnic. None of these ploys can work, however, unless the soul-calling ritual has already been properly observed. Leah's Buletinplag took place in the living room of her family's apartment. There were so many guests, all of them Hmong and most of them members of the Li and Yang clans, that it was nearly impossible to turn around. Phwa and Nao Kao were proud that so many people had come to celebrate their good fortune in being favored with such a healthy and beautiful daughter. That morning Nao Kao had sacrificed a pig in order to invite the soul of one of Leah's ancestors, which was probably hungry and would appreciate an offering of food, to be reborn in her body. After the guests arrived, an elder of the Yang clan stood at the apartment's open front door, facing East 12th Street, with 2 live chickens in a bag on the floor next to him, and chanted a greeting to Leah's soul. The 2 chickens were then killed, plucked, eviscerated, partially boiled, retrieved from the cooking pot, and examined to see if their skulls were translucent and their tongues curled upward, both signs that Leah's new soul was pleased to take up residence in her body and that her name was a good one. If the signs had been inauspicious, the soul caller would have recommended that another name be chosen. After the reading of the auguries, the chickens were put back in the cooking pot. The guests would later eat them and the pig for dinner. Before the meal, the soul caller brushed Leah's hands with a bundle of short white strings and said, "I am sweeping away the ways of sickness." Then Leah's parents and all of the elders present in the room each tied a string around one of Leah's wrists in order to bind her soul securely to her body. Phwa and Nao Kao promised to love her. The elders blessed her and prayed that she would have a long life and that she would never become sick. C. 1997 Ann Fadiman, all rights reserved. ISBN 0-374-26781-2.
What the hell were we just listening to? And why did I hear the word amphetamine? My name is Annie Fetterman. Nice to meet you. Yeah, okay. Welcome to the opioid amphetamine epidemic, Annie Fetterman. Your name must be really awkward when you go to school and they do roll call. Oh my goodness. Hey, do you like my t-shirt? I didn't know that we were going to be listening to a thing. Can you see what it is? Do I have enough light? It's like a fetus. It's like a geeked out little baby with like a laptop and everything up in there. That's how poor I am. I sometimes find things at the thrift store and like I'm like, oh, I gotta get that. That's a Jinx brand t-shirt. I don't care if it's made for a girl. I just want to own something that's Jinx, because I'm a hacker. You know? It's like, I think that it's supposed to be a subliminal mind control kind of like thing. Neurolinguistic programming. Let's just say if you're a girl and you want to get impregnated by a geek guy, you might wear a shirt like this one with like a fucking geeked out fetus. Yeah, I know you can't see. One more time. One more time. It's a pretty good t-shirt. I mean, like, I don't know. I think back in the day when I was like that. Look at how that kids. I still sit like that to this day. I'm all like, all right, let's hack this box already. Root pwned. Hey, fuck you, dude. He's laughing and mocking me and my gecko. He's such a dick. That fucking what's his name? Wart? Dude, he is disgusting. Just like a wart. How dare you mock my suffering? You think I'm a disgusting, filthy junkie? You think I'm hopeless? Man, I'm Zot the fucking Avenger. I'm JJ, the producer of Bright Eye, or wait, how does it go again? I'm JJ, the producer of video games and more, and I'm JJ, the owner of Bright Idea Records. How dare you mock me, wart? You disgusting nuisance. I can hardly wait until Mario subdues you. Like I saw this one time on my friend's Twitch channel. Desi. Damn, man. I changed my shirt. I should have grabbed my accessory. I bought one of those Nintendo things. It's like a clamshell design, and like, it's like, it's a futuristic kind of thing where it senses the movements. You know what? Nintendezi knows what I'm talking about. If you don't know what I'm talking about, whatever, man. You know, it's just a video game reference. And this guy is such a nuisance. You know, this is my poor 18-year-old gecko. He'll turn 19 August of next year. Right around August the 5th when I bought him. And he was just like the tiniest little tadpole of a freaking... Granted, he's not an amphibian. He's not a literal tadpole. I'm just trying to say... I'm not going to call him a larvae because he's way better than a bug. Not that there's anything wrong with being a bug. It's just like, you know, he's so much more. He's just like, he's just like my best friend in the whole world. He's an artist just like me. And do you see our most recent picture, that one up there? I know it's kind of scrunched up. I did that so we could like see, you know, the New York Times emblem. Here, let's make it real obvious for those that don't have the highest of resolutions on their displays. You know, it's like, you know, I'm trying to finish what I started. We started with the New York Times article. I hope to finish this soon because I'm sick of this fucking topic. It's really a drag. I don't enjoy my work. You know, like, I made like 8 SoundCloud accounts worth of music because like I enjoyed that work. That's why I did it, because I enjoyed it. It's a good I know, work. What does that even mean, right? Is that the thing that makes you money so you can survive? Or is that the thing that you do to provide you with sanity? So that way you can, like, not go postal? Something like that. Maybe somewhere in the middle. Yeah. Did I already say that? Hey everybody, it's me, JJ, the producer of video games and more and owner of Bright Idea Records. I like that. It rolls off my tongue almost. Was that some crazy shit, dude, that we just listened to? Like, it sounds ridiculous, right? I mean, like, my text to speech plugin, read aloud, is like, I had to slow the speed. So if it sounded like a retard was reading to us, and I use that term with the utmost respect, some of my best friends were retards. I don't think I have any retard friends right now. That's like short slang for retarded, mentally retarded. It's like when you have an IQ that's like below, you know, the average. Granted, I act retarded, and I'm above average. Isn't that something to consider? Well, you know, I told you guys in the previous stream that I always find a common ground with the people that I encounter. And yeah, but I don't know, man. Those Hmong people from Laos, they're Laotian. Just like the guy on that's a systems analyst on King of the Hill. What's his name? It's he talks like this, and his daughter is the best friend of Bobby Hill. What the fuck is that guy's name? Supernewsophone? His name is something. I'll just call him Mr. Supernewsophone, because that works. It's a respectful way to refer to the man, and I can't remember his first name. It's Khan. His name is Khan. All right, I'll call him Khan now. Khan Supernewsophone from Laos, and yeah, I guess his people, the Laotian people, they have a few different superstitious beliefs. Granted, how superstitious are they? I wonder. It's strange to think how an intelligent being could come up with such superstitious, you know. I took some time to do my hair. Alright, I'd like to at least see it in the fucking picture. I even trimmed the back. Like, my back my mullet hair grows a lot faster because, like, I'm not bald back there. Anyways, yeah, how do intelligent beings come up with such superstitious notions, right? Shall we just dismiss them because we're so Western civilization, or what? I mean, that's your prerogative. If you want to, you can go right ahead and dismiss them. But, like, I'd like to think in a more scientific way, you know? Like, maybe these people have observed, like, repeatable patterns, you know? Habits and patterns that led them to believe such crazy nonsense, right? Because it sounds so arbitrary, right? All the stuff about chickens and blah, blah, blah. It's remarkable for me at this moment because I experience so many coincidences on a daily basis that could lead me to believe just about anything without any kind of, like, introspective analysis, without any kind of, like, outrospective analysis. Yeah, right. So much analysis, so much time that gets consumed. You know what? I can afford it. I'm gonna try to make the most of it. You know, if you want to talk about superstitious beliefs and behavior, how about the zodiac? Like, we get our horoscopes in the newspaper and stuff like that all the time, right? Like, some choose to read it and get the news, get their horoscope forecast for the day, and others just say, what a bunch of superstitious nonsense, you know? And then others say, I don't know what to believe, because, hey, sometimes they're right, right? Granted, it depends on the interpreter. The more I do this shit, the more I like to think I'm some sort of like grand interpreter. I don't know if that's a glorious thing to be. Does that mean I gotta hang out at a glory hole if I'm glorified or glorious? You know what? Let's just forget all that. Let's pretend like status doesn't exist. Wouldn't that be nice? But, you know, let's just say maybe some people have more intuition than others for whatever reason. I mean, like, is that offensive? Are you gonna, like, automatically react by saying, hey, I got as much intuition as anybody? It's like, I'll bet you do. It's not meant to be offensive. It's kind of like, you know, just stop and consider, if you will, a divining rod. You know? I think that's the right term. You know, like in cartoons, whenever, like, they're lost in the middle of the desert and they need to find water, they usually pick up a twig that looks like a triangle, kind of, in a way. Because it has, like, a Y. It looks like the letter Y. It's like that. Like a divining rod in a cartoon. It's like, and like, you grab the Y part, you grab each, like, a handle, and then, like, that other point, you know, is gonna lead you to water if you just follow your intuition, right? It's kind of like a Ouija board, like when you got that triangular oracle, you know, and it's like everybody's holding it, the triangular oracle, and it leads you to different letters that, like, tell you something. So, like, for whatever reason, people believe that they can be led to the truth. Because that's all it ever amounts to, is the truth, right? It's like, truly, there's some water, and this divining rod is going to lead you to it, right? And truly, there's a message that is trying to be sent to you, but you got to be open to it, and you also have to be intuitive enough to, like, receive the message that you're supposed to get that leads you to the truth. Okay, so what? It all just sounds like hocus pocus mumbo jumbo to a scientist, right? I don't know. How does the divining rod work? Isn't there some kind of a magnetic pull? Maybe? Like, why does this concept exist at all if it's not a real thing, right? I wonder. It's kind of like a horoscope. It's like, why do horoscopes exist? And why are people born in the month of June expected to have certain traits, whereas people born in the month of November are expected to have totally different traits? What's that about? Is that, like, maybe analysis? Maybe, like, some kind of, like, interpreter managed to come to these conclusions at some point after they had observed repeated occurrences of this unique coincidence? Could it be? I don't know, man. I'm just some punk. I'm a punk rock guy, and I'm so drunk right now, I can't believe I could even say what I just said. It's like, how am I articulating so well? I don't think it's strictly the caffeine pill that I only took one. Like, I could probably stand to take another. I kind of feel exhausted. Especially when I see my poor friends suffering. You know that picture up there? That's him in a full suit of unshed skin. He's like gray, like up there. He's like totally washed out because his skin is ready to be sloughed off, but he's so exhausted from the tumor in his gut that nobody can operate on and remove for whatever reason. None of the veterinarians that I know have the balls to even offer the option to me and him. Osama bin Gecko, my best friend for 18 years. And I get to just like watch him suffer while the rest of you people look like Wart over there going, ha ha, JJ's suffering, ha ha. And so is Osama bin Gecko, ha ha. That's cruel. Can't anybody offer us something better than that? I mean, I'm responsible for him. You know how much guilt and grief I live with knowing I can't do any better? And he's not even my baby. Like, he's not even a baby. He's my bro, really. I think of him more as a peer than as like something I'm not his caretaker. He's as much my caretaker as I am his. We're peers. He's an artist, and sometimes I think he's a better artist than me. If you can believe that. Like, he's refusing to slough off his dead skin. It's almost like he's clinging to the past. What's that? Like, not... There was, like, one teeny tiny little hole. Like, I think you can see it, like... If we zoom in, I'm not gonna bother, because, you know, it might just be that the dead skin was crumply. Maybe there was one particular area that, like, got, you know... Hey, man, you know, it's dead skin. I don't know how to... I use a loofah normally, because I'm a human, and I'm intelligent. Granted, this guy's pretty intelligent, too, I think. I really do. He behaves different from any other gecko I've ever met. I think this guy is probably like an evolutionary step above the average gecko. You know, we evolve. Humans, we evolve, right? We evolved from lesser life forms. You know? I wonder what those lesser life forms looked like. You know, the ones that were more evolved than everything else that came before them, the mutants, you know, like the intermediary, you know, thing, the intermediary creature. That is the right word, right? Intermediary, isn't it? I think that's the right word. Intermediary, excuse me. Intermediary, oh, it refers to a person. I'm talking about a gecko, but okay. Intermediary, a person who acts as a link between people in order to try to bring about an agreement or a reconciliation. A mediator. Intermediaries between lenders and borrowers. Yeah, I don't think that was the word I was looking for, but that is a great word. I'd like to think that I'm an intermediary between the logical and the illogical, but I can be so illogical, especially when I'm emotional and I'm speaking with my feelings, but I will never, ever agree to give up my feelings. Like, if the devil was right here and the devil said, hey JJ, if you sign this contract I can fix your gecko's illness, I can guarantee you fortunes and celebrity or whatever. I'd be like, yo, devil, I don't need celebrity. The fortunes sound very useful, and especially the alleviation of the suffering of my best friend. But what do you want? He's like, yeah, you gotta give up your emotions. I'd be like, dude, my superpowers rely upon my emotions. My intuition, my superhuman intuition, the thing that keeps me alive. I told you guys how when I had that rollover car accident, I survived because I knew how to do a ninja roll, and I protected my head like this, and my elbows still have the scars to this day. Yeah, but I also had the intuition, because as soon as I heard the screech, it woke me up, and I went, huh? And I felt the weightlessness. As freaky as that sounds, I did. I felt the weightlessness when the vehicle rolled, and I prepared myself for the kerwump. You know, when I went from weightless to hitting the ground super hard with my back that's still injured to this day. That feels good. Ah, it's tender. It's tender. Oh, but it feels good to break up the... Yeah, I don't know why the human body reacts that way. Like, when in an injured spot, like, everything gets really tight there. It's almost like as if the body is trying to compensate for the injury. And its way of compensating is making everything super tight there. Probably it's rushing too many healing things at once to that location, and it just does it over and over and over because it's a stupid nervous system. It's a stupid body. My system is stupid. It's ultimately my brain that is smart, right? But you know, these autonomic things, they're ultimately stupid. It's the brain. And if the brain is too busy dealing with other problems, how's it ever going to do anything right? I don't know, man. It's just a theory. It's just an idea. But, yeah, the intuition thing. I couldn't trade that. I'm sorry, Mr. Devil. Why don't you fuck off? Okay. Like as if that's ever going to happen, right? That wasn't the word I was looking for. It's a good thing. It's a good word, though. Maybe I was thinking of, you know, you've all seen that evolutionary chart where they show like Australopithecus and Cro-Magnon and like modern man. I guess I'm talking about the missing link. That's what I'm talking about. My gecko is the missing link. Osama bin Gecko is an artist, and he is a higher evolved gecko than all of his girlfriends or anything. Even his son. You know what? I don't know what to say about Wolfie. He's buried in my backyard. He had a bone problem, and he basically, his little paws were like retard paws. Poor little thing. He had like a... I think it's like the amniotic sac. He had like this thing on his ankle. It was like a GPS bracelet like you get when you're a prisoner in your own home. You know what I'm talking about, like house arrest. Yeah, this little amniotic sac, it fell off when he hatched. Apparently it was supposed to stay attached to his ankle to deliver nutrients, you know, until he was a big, strong, you know, manly gecko. And I suppose because the sack, you know, it isn't like I tried to keep it on there. You know, I wasn't being delicate. It looked like some schmutz that needed to be wiped away, right? You know, what can you do? I think I probably ruined that gecko's life accidentally by mishandling him. You know, at least I can acknowledge my failure and try to do better. Granted, I haven't tried to hatch an egg in a long time because I don't have the resources. I don't have the emotional capacity to deal with another failure, another loss of life. You know, we're dealing with an evolved life form here. The missing fucking link. Do you get it? He's an artist. Osama bin Gecko is an artist, and I think his child was going to be an artist too. Granted, they didn't get to live that long. Can you acknowledge what I'm talking about? Like, you think of, you know, oh, it's just a creature, it's just like a lower life form. But what happens when they evolve? And you're just acting like Wart, just laughing at the lower life form. Don't you think evolution is happening on this planet right now? You ever think about that? What does evolution look like, huh? What? Do you only think about that when you're watching the X-Men movies? Is that what's up? How evolved of you? I'd like to watch some more videos because I'm trying to compensate for my lack of finishing what I start. I suggested something. Yeah, I'd like to find out the right word. I found it. Missing link. We're gonna move on. I think that this person, I've never read any of her books, Annie Fetterman or however you say it, but I was looking for a correlation between epilepsy and shamanism. Because you see, I can remember that I have heard intelligent people theorize that there is a link between epilepsy and the hallucinations that humans are known to experience during bouts of epileptic activity. Okay? And so therefore, shamans are considered the spiritual leaders in a tribal community. All that hocus pocus mumbo jumbo junk that you're listening to from Annie Fetterman's book, okay? And the Laotian people, the Hmong. I'm not going to pretend like I know anything about them. But I do know something about being different and weird, and I have been to Merced, California before. It's on the internet in those Zero Tolerance Task Force Home Movies videos I uploaded. We used to go to the Fatty Mocha in Merced. You know, some people are scared of refugees because they're different. I personally think of them as a blessing because they provide much needed diversity. And without diversity, a community can become stagnant. Like swamp water that doesn't move around enough. I'm trying to finish what I start, okay? On that 3-hour stream that we made, I made reference to a bleach party that I had just had. And that was a reference to my air conditioner, okay? My air conditioner had started to smell funny. Not only that, but there's like a windscreen, there's like a filter that has like, it's like a screen door kind of thing. And this filter acts as an absorber of like the dust and the weird shit that floats around in the air, right? Like, cause the air conditioner is kind of like a vacuum for that kind of stuff. And even though I have an air filter, a HEPA air filter over there, that's whirring away right now. Yeah. Well, you know, it doesn't It can't take care of everything. It can't suck every particulate in the air up. So when it fails, that the filter in my air conditioner, that screen door thing, it picks up where the HEPA air filter leaves off, and it can get kind of weird. It can get kind of clogged up, and so I make sure to check it every once in a while and like brush it with a brush, like a toothbrush kind of, but like bigger than that, because that would take forever. Granted, I did use a toothbrush one time, and it did take forever. Anyways, and there was like a weird little like speck. There was like a tiny little speck of like brown schmutzy, kind of like, it looked like someone had spilled a coffee like very recently, like some black coffee on my air conditioner filter. It's like, what is this? And like a few days after that, I noticed it smells like dog shit in here. What the fuck is going on with my air conditioner? And I dumped some bleach into the little like ventilation grates on the side. They're outside, not in here. I can't dump bleach in there from in here. But yeah, it turns out that after I dumped the bleach in there, it smelt great in here. And I have no problems whatsoever. It's pretty great. I'm so happy I was intuitive enough to notice that and do something about it rather quickly, as opposed to letting it linger and fester like Uncle Fester. Maybe. It's just like, it's important to notice things when they're a little deal rather than when they're a big deal, like problems. And we could have done that with COVID-19, but we let it turn into a big deal. And now we're going into an opioid epidemic. Oh no, now it's an opioid amphetamine addict. Or epidemic. I'm so drunk, you guys. And I'm exhausted. But I can see the wrong things with my own two eyes, because I have the luxury of time and being able to pay attention. I struggle to survive, but survival is pretty easy. People make a big deal out of like bringing home the bacon, being the breadwinners, blah blah blah. Yeah, it's not as difficult as you might think. My old man, he was not very good at that kind of thing. But I still made it to this ripe old age of 42. So, it's not that difficult. But, shit, man, all those weird little hoodoo voodoo rituals of the Hmong, they make it sound difficult almost. But why? Why would they believe such wacky, crazy notions? I don't know, man. I guess we're done talking about the bleach party. I wanted to make sure we cleared that up because, I think there was a trend, maybe like before I was born or something, where people would take bleach and throw it in your face, like when you're acting callous and you're out at a bar or a tavern or a pub, basically when you're hanging out with other humans, if you approach another human and you act like a callous jerk, they might take their drink and throw it in your face, right? Yeah? Could you imagine what would happen if that drink was filled with bleach? That would rot your face off. Might make you blind. That's super serious. It's a terrible idea. But, I mean, why do I even know that's a thing? I'm a high school dropout, right? Obviously somebody had that idea and did it once, and I heard about it, and thought, oh my god, that's ghastly. That's about the most fucked up thing you could do. Aside from, letting someone suffer and fester? Like some kind of a helpless kind of sick thing? Like, what can you do? maybe stop and help? Maybe go out of your way for once to make sure that the suffering ends? Like, I know I'm not that good at answering my email. I know. My phone number is on brightidearecords.com. If you have any idea how to alleviate my suffering, please call me. Leave a message. Granted, I haven't checked my voicemail in a while. That's true. But, you know, please try and call me. I gotta go to a doctor's appointment tomorrow. I know this because they called me today. I answered and I pressed 1 to confirm I'd be there. You know, I used to be better at checking my email. Back before I got this way. What way is that, JJ? Just totally disenchanted with everything. Because it's like, it's so, you put so much effort into things. And when that, you know, they say the definition of insanity is repeating the same behavior when it doesn't work. Yeah, you know, I want to feel good. And yeah, checking my mail, whether it's voicemail, email, or snail mail, it rarely leads to me feeling good. It's like always bad news. So that's the bleach party. And those are the 2 different ways that it could be interpreted. Also, okay, back to the horoscope. Okay? I'm trying to finish what I start, okay? So we're talking about the Hmong and how could people end up so superstitious? Could it be through analysis, repeated observations, and drawing conclusions from those observations? Hey, look, I mentioned earlier, I don't really like to jump to conclusions. It's more like hopping to likely, what, conclusions? Wait a minute. Jumping to conclusions, hopping to likely scenarios? That wasn't the way I said it, but that's a little closer. Hopping to likely occurrences? Something like that. Whatever I said, yeah, that's like the preferable thing to do. Don't jump to a conclusion until you have all your scientific method evidence. Okay? Like, otherwise you're gonna make a jackass out of yourself and anybody that believes and trusts you and your data. Okay? So, why do we have horoscopes? Gee, I don't know. Maybe, just maybe, there was some repeated observations, like, and they had to do with time and space, and, like, you know, people had to, like, make something out of these coincidences because they were more than just coincidences. If I had to give merit to such a phenomenon as, like, horoscopes, you know, I would have to acknowledge the cyclic nature of the universe. How the Earth has an orbit. Every 24 hours we have a new day, and that new day allows us a chance to begin again in a golden land of opportunity and adventure. Okay. And also every 365 days we have a new year that gives us a chance to begin again in a golden land of opportunity and adventure. So there's an obvious cyclical nature to our existence because of our galaxy and our universe. Supposedly, our galaxy is orbiting something. I don't know. Mostly, here in the Milky Way, we just sort of, like, orbit the sun. You know? Otherwise known as Sol. And, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of other languages. It must have other names. But let's just say the sun. That's generic enough. We orbit the sun. There's a few planets. I think it's less than 10. You got like Mercury, Venus, Mars, Earth. I think there's like Jupiter and Saturn and Uranus. Wait, is that the one that's been reclassified as a star? I forget. Am I thinking of Pluto? No, Pluto is the one that got reclassified. Yeah, man. And they all kind of go in this song and dance, right? And perhaps there's a gravitational pull that occurs, when these big planetary bodies are close to each other. Like as if there's some mutual attraction and the gravity is like pulling and pushing, much like magnets, if you will. If you can imagine such a thing. Sorry, picture. If you can imagine these planetary bodies like just sort of going around in a circle, but then every once in a while they get a little too close and there's like some kind of a pull. And it's funny because I just felt the repelling. It doesn't have to be like, I can't make these stick together. They are totally opposed to each other. It's amazing that, like, right now I can't get them to connect, but if they just spin just a little bit, they're best friends, right? Maybe that has something to do with the horoscopes. Maybe that's why they're true. Or maybe they're not true. Maybe it's all just a bunch of coincidences that occurred. But whatever the case may be, I can respect the time and effort that somebody took to make the analysis that, hey, this might be true, because I've taken time, I've written down in a book every occurrence of this and that and the other, and that there might be something more than just coincidence involved. Coincidence is a word that means that something happens more than once, I guess. Because that's like, it's kind of like deja vu, right? Something happens more than once. But with a coincidence, if it happens more than once, yeah, I'm kind of doing like that kind of a thing, like the medicine balls. I'm doing that, but I'm like, that's why you hear that. So yeah, a coincidence occurs more than once, but there's no meaning to it, right? It's just luck of the draw. It's just a chance coincidence. Yeah, chance coincidence. You're talking to the bad luck kid. You want to talk about chance coincidence. I know fate when I see it, okay? I know when something is coincidence, and I can feel it. It's kind of like that song that I was singing earlier that I made a video out of. You know what I mean? If you can't feel it, well, you don't have my evolved intuition. And I don't even know how to interpret it. I could use a Professor Xavier right now, probably. But I don't even care about superpowers. I just want to help my fucking gecko. He's gonna die if I don't help him. All that skin, that gray skin that he refuses to slough off. Sometimes he sloughs it off. Sometimes he just wallows in it. It depends upon his circumstances. It's not a coincidence. I see the correlation. I respect his suffering and his plight and I'm so happy when he's doing good. And he hasn't done good in a long fucking time, and none of you are doing anything to help my pal. And if you are, well, give me a fucking phone call, please. Because I'm not that evolved. I don't know how to check my email. I can't move past my post-traumatic stress. I'm sorry. I'm scared of bad news. I don't expect good news. I'm sorry. I don't get enough of it. It's literally a bad idea to check my mail. Do you get it? I'm sorry if I'm failing you. I'm really sorry. I'm just trying to start what I finish. I figure that's a virtue. And a lot of people never do that. So if I'm coherent enough to notice that I made a stream and I didn't finish one of the topics, I'm going to try to later. No, I wasn't saying goodbye. I was saying I will try to finish the topic at a later date and time. That's what I meant. Know what I mean? It's not a coincidence. It's a deliberate kind of thing. And these Hmong people, they've noticed some deliberate things. And I guess Western medicine is like dismissive of these things because it doesn't fall within the realm of their experiments. They have no proof of these things, and it all sounds like mumbo jumbo. It's kind of like earlier when I was like, why are tiger penises and rhino horns a highly sought after item? Like, what is that? Right? Maybe there's some kind of a nutrient or a chemical or some kind of thingamurbob in these elements. Like, maybe there's elements inside of these objects, and that's why they're so sought after. It can't all be superstition. Because if it was superstition, it wouldn't be true. Like, if something is overwhelmingly true for a large percentage of the time, right? That means that people stick with it. Because there's a lot of people. Sometimes it's hard to wrap your head around just how many people there are on planet Earth and how many different ways of life there are. Because we're all like, you know, wrapped up in our American way of life. Here, on the zottheavengerrules channel and the jjstylesrocks channel, yeah, I tend to have to exist within your, what's the right word, paradigm? Your atmosphere? The American atmosphere? Yeah, you know, if I ever step outside of my, you know, familiar kind of modern civilization atmosphere, whatever you want to call it, my microcosm, it is pretty micro because there's a lot out there. In order to be macro, you'd have to accept, understand, and interpret all of it. That's pretty macro, dude. I couldn't do that in a lifetime, probably. It would take a lot of help. I mean, I got so many problems, it's difficult to do my little microcosm. Like, I've got a digestive problem right now caused by my opioids that I'm trying to deal with that's painful. On top of that, my back hurts. On top of that, like, I'm trying to have a good time when I'm having a bad time. On top of that, I'm worried about my responsibility. At the same time, you are my responsibility. All you mediocre minds, I'm probably the missing link, just like he's the missing link. Because I got levels of intuition for whatever reason. Maybe it's because I've had extra time to, like, be introspective and, like, do extra analysis, you know, using my slightly, ever so slightly higher than average IQ. I told you guys, don't tell anybody I'm smart, please. I can't handle the responsibility, and I can't handle the extra attention. I actually like my low analytics, because it gives me a chance to do streams like this one, where I'm making up for my mistakes, and I'm starting what I finished. Okay? Like, if I had higher analytics, you know, I'd be all stressed out about losing fans because, oh, I didn't start what I finished earlier, you know? But luckily, I don't have to stress out over that, and I can be as sloppy as I need to be, because it's not gonna really seriously affect anybody, right? Like if Oprah would have done her talk show and, you know, neglected things, you know, there's all kinds of housewives eating their bonbons that would have been, but what happens next, Oprah? I'm on the edge of my seat, right? You know? It's like I'm not going to leave too many people like that, but I still worry that I might, and I still start what I finish if I can. You know, start what you finish. You know, I got a million projects. I got a bunch of broken electronics around here. I'm more concerned about evacuating my concrete bowels right now because I'm an opioid addict. What a severe burden. Yeah. Yeah, good times, right? Why don't you envy the dope sick, constipated junkie? Because I'm so high, right? I'm just trying to function. I just want a consistent. I want to know what to expect. Most of you wake up and go to sleep and you know what to expect. I really don't. Like, that's why I bitch about my fentanyl so much. It's like I had a good 15 years where I knew what to expect and I could try to compensate for any problems that I might have, you know? But I have no consistency in my life these days, and it makes it such a struggle. It's no wonder people invented things like the zodiac and the horoscope. They wanted to know what to expect, right? I mean, give me a break. It's not asking too much. That isn't asking too much at all to try to have some kind of control over your future. You know, the whole punk rock thing happened because under a microscope, you know, under analysis, like if you were to look at things, there was no future to be had. It made sense to be anarchy. It made sense to be chaos. You don't know if a bomb's gonna drop. You don't know if you're gonna have a job in the future because the economy is shit. You don't know if you'll be able to drive your car because there's energy crises happening all the time where people wait in line at the gas station for a mile. You know? Seriously, and you still have the oppressive hand of religion telling you, hey, if you accidentally get pregnant in this world where you can't even provide for yourself, let alone a child, yeah, guess what? We're not gonna let you get an abortion real easily. Yeah, if you do it at home, you might end up dead, but we're not gonna help you because it's a sin, and we can't be complicit with any sins because we're gonna go to hell. Yeah, that's real nice. That's really fucking nice. That's really nice. Makes me want to have children. Makes me want to hatch his eggs. Knowing that there's just more suffering in the cycle, whether it be a 24-hour cycle or a 365-day cycle. So, I'm going to play some videos because I'm trying to start what I finish. It's about time I turn off the microphone. I might walk away from the computer if this stream extends into nothingness because I neglect it. You know, I'll get back to it soon enough and stop it. But I just want to check out a few videos because I suggested something earlier and I'd like to see if it was a good suggestion or not. Let's find out together, okay? Thanks for watching on twitch.tv, zottheavengerrules, and on YouTube, jjstylesrocks. I really appreciate it. I'm not seeking attention, I'm seeking to help the problems that we all suffer from at this current point and avoid dystopia at all costs. You know what I mean?
we're continuing our addiction series today. This morning's segment is on one of the most deadly addictions of our time, opioids.
Vanessa Borge spoke to Dr. Drew Pinsky about the epidemic. She's here now with what more he had to say. Good morning.
Good morning, Tony Roxia. And this is an epidemic. Nearly 48,000 Americans died in 2017 from an opioid overdose. We met the mother of an addict. Here's her story.
He was just a beautiful little boy with gorgeous hazel eyes.
Maggie Flightman is a mother of 4 boys. Mitchell is the oldest.
He was very protective of them. He loved them very much.
But over the years, something changed in Mitchell.
Why was I finding spoons in my son's bedroom? Entire rolls of aluminum foil from my kitchen. It was a horrible thing to have to tell my younger sons, hide your wallets, hide your things.
All signs of a drug addiction.
We're living in a home where there's no longer peace and tranquility and safety.
Mitchell was hooked on opiates.
Opioids are painkillers. We've all heard the names of them. There are drugs like Norco, morphine, Demerol, fentanyl, of course, heroin.
In the 1990s, pharmaceutical companies falsely claimed that their new opioid drugs were less addictive alternatives to painkillers. Dr. Drew Pinsky saw it firsthand.
Well-meaning professionals went out and was just handing out opiates like you cannot believe, and it was killing my patients on a regular basis.
And many doctors are handing out prescriptions to some of the most vulnerable among us. About 16% of Americans have mental health disorders, yet they receive more than half of all opioid prescriptions. Mitchell is one of them.
Later on, we were to discover that he suffered with mental health challenges.
The opioids, the drugs, serve as a mask for whatever else is below. So sometimes it's an underlying mental health issue, like depression or anything. And sometimes it's trauma that people have been through in the past that they just don't want to look at anymore.
Mitchell's addictions led him to jail. He had just been released from prison and was going to enter a rehab program on Friday morning. On Thursday night, Maggie knew something was wrong. She noticed Mitch nodding off. He was high.
It's called the last hurrah, and that means you're going to want to do drugs one last time before you enter a program. But that evening, everything changed. My last words to him were words that I wish I could take back. I was extremely disappointed.
Darby Crash had a last hurrah, I know that much. I think Okie Dogs was involved. Whatever, man. Okay, I'm sorry. Continue.
In him.
Maggie found Mitchell in his room the next morning. He had overdosed on the heroin he had taken the night before during his last hurrah.
He never would have wanted his mother to find him in his home.
He died just hours before he was to enter rehab. Mitchell Flightman was 22 years old.
His life matters, and it still does, even though he's...
Darby was 23, I believe. Nice soul patch guy, Mitchell. Rest in peace. If there is such a thing.
He's no longer here. That really wasn't my Mitch doing that. That was just this terrible disease that took over. It definitely does not define him in any way. He's so much more. He was my beautiful firstborn son.
Mitchell became one of the 400,000 people in our country who have died from an opioid overdose in the last 2 decades. As for Maggie, she founded a group called Solace for Hope, an organization that helps addicts and their families. Mitchell's death was not in vain, and Maggie makes sure of that every day. Tony Roxia.
Vanessa, thank you.
All right.
Aw, snap. I had to change my Facebook password to something I can't remember. And then I reinstalled Windows, so none of my cached passwords are available. And on top of that, I don't know, man. I don't know what hard drive that's on. And oh, what, am I supposed to reset my password? Is that what I'm supposed to do? I say, hey, I forgot, and it'll send me a new one, right? I gotta remember to do that. Okay, moving on. I really have no desire to be on Facebook. It's kind of hard to remember to do that. No desire. Notifications? No, I don't want your notifications. I want your video. That's I'm trying to I'm trying to share, like, whatever, man. Whatever. I can find things. I'm capable. He's got a lot of these. He's already familiar with the United States government, it looks like. Has he been Surgeon General already? Am I suggesting something crazy? Like, because he's already done it and it didn't work? Is that like, I'd like to think I had a good idea. I don't know how original it is. You know, that's one way to have an original idea, is to, like, suggest something with regards to a person. Because, you know, throughout human history, everything's been thought up under the sun. Yeah, but there's new people being born every day. So if you suggest something that involves a new person is about as unique as a new invention, you know?
A summit on efforts to deliver mental health treatment to people experiencing homelessness, violence, and substance abuse issues. In this portion of the summit, mental health professionals and state and local leaders addressed mental health treatment reform efforts. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar and TV and radio host Dr. Drew Pinsky also delivered remarks.
Thanks so much, and thank you for the hard work of your office in making this event happen, and also my colleagues in the Office of Public Liaison. They did fantastic work here at the White House. Welcome to the White House and to this summit. Those people in the know often describe our country's system for providing treatment to persons with serious mental illness as being in crisis. Why is in crisis an apt description for how we treat Americans who suffer from serious mental illness? Of the 11 million, upwards of 4 million are receiving no treatment. Their lives lost to psychosis and schizophrenia. Untreated serious mental illness represents a huge and unnecessary loss of human potential. It is also making worse some of our more dire social conditions.
I apologize.
Such as the incidence of random acts of violence,
for the crappy audio,
unsheltered homelessness, substance abuse, and the disturbing rise in the rate of suicide. Now, I want to emphasize, these problems are exacerbated not by serious mental illness. They are exacerbated by untreated serious mental illness. Today's historic conversation draws broadly on the expertise of people from many disciplines, experiences, and perspectives. And our goal is to put on the table a robust set of reforms in how we go about delivering treatment to persons with serious mental illness. The Trump administration has already begun the process of rebuilding our treatment system. This very week, the President will sign the fiscal year 2020 appropriations bill, which makes important investments in the improvement of the treatment of those suffering from serious mental illness. It includes a $120 million increase in the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration and provides $200 million for certified community behavioral health centers. These clinics provide comprehensive services to those suffering from mental illness.
Excuse me, I'm just gonna voice my opinion because this is my stream. And you know, that sounds really great. except for the fact that's not that much money when it comes to a gigantic problem. Gargantuan problem? That's more accurate. Okay. Aside from that, some of those centers might as well be asylums from the freaking 19th century, you know? Some of them are, you know? I watched my father go into places where he actually got to hang out and play guitar and have a positive environment to exist in, where like he actually got back to some kind of state of sanity as opposed to the downward spiraling rabbit hole that he was stuck in. And then I saw him go into other places, you know, mostly to his geographic location. They were usually taking him to the closest place to dump him and get rid of him, right? And other places, he would show up and have to fight for his life because there were psycho people ready to punch him at random. And trust me, he would take those people and demolish them and leave them bloody, pulpy messes. And I can't blame him. He was a very dangerous man with a gigantic soul and heart, that one of the most compassionate people you could ever meet. But if you fuck with him or his family, he'd leave you a mess. And you know, a person like that mixed with post-traumatic stress and a chemical, they diagnosed him chemically dependent one time. This guy, Dr. Bupp, over at Tucson Psychiatric, that's what he wrote in his doctor notes. He wrote, Judd's a chemically dependent person. What does that even mean? Is that another way of saying addict? Is that a nice scientific way to label my father? The guy that used to like spoon me at night and tell me stories about life and what to expect because he didn't want me to go through what he went through, even though right now at this moment I'm going through the exact same fucking thing in terms of a broken back, which he had, in terms of an opioid addiction, which he had, in terms of being like a musician, a songwriter, like he was. Man, I feel like I'm reliving the exact same thing. You know, they talk about poverty, cycles of poverty. There's some word for it. I forget what it is. I think it's called generations of poverty or something. Like, yeah, that too. Yeah. Why am I still repeating the same fucking bullshit that he tried to save me from with his stories and lessons? Like, I followed them to a T. But I had accidents. I got injured and ended up the same way, and there's no fucking avenue for me to fucking go down. Let's see what the goddamn experts have to offer, please. I could really use some hope, even though I know hope is a bad thing because it always lets me down. I swear, if I don't get some fuel for my hope fire, I think I'll just end up consumed by my hate fire. It's like polar opposites, you know? If you're familiar with such a concept, you got your good fire and your bad fire. Yeah, man, I could use some fuel for my good fire, please. That would be nice. Let's see what these experts have to say. Even though it happened during the Trump era, what a dirty, dark era. I don't give a fuck, man. If there's any good ideas to be had, I'm listening. Because I'm desperate. I don't know if you know what that feels like. I'm very desperate for some good ideas. And I've never watched this. All right.
Provides $125 million for Project Aware, which helps schools, community organizations, first responders, and others to identify mental health issues and help those affected youth and others get the treatment that they need. It includes $19 million for assisted outpatient treatment and $6 million for criminal and juvenile justice programs that help move seriously mentally ill individuals away from the criminal justice system and into more appropriate treatment venues. And it includes $7 million for assertive community treatment and evidence-based practice where multidisciplinary teams provide highly specialized and personalized care. These funds are just a down payment on what will be, hopefully, a potentially much larger set of reforms that we're going to identify and discuss today. There is much, much more work that needs to be done. To start us off in our conversation, we have with us this morning Dr. Drew Pinsky. I can think of no person better able to explain to us how we got into the situation we're currently in, nor to describe for us the price that we pay as a society for failing to treat persons suffering from serious mental illness. You know Dr. Drew from his accomplished career on radio and television, which included Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, the wildly popular VH1 series that chronicled celebrities' struggle for sobriety, and also Rehab with Dr. Drew, which followed the experiences of everyday people battling addiction. Dr. Drew is also the author of several books, including Cracked, Putting Broken Lives Together Again. All the while he has been pursuing this very successful media career, though, Dr. Drew Pinsky maintained an active medical practice. He belongs to both the American Board of Internal Medicine and the American Board of Addiction Medicine. He was for many years an assistant clinical professor of psychiatry at USC's Keck School of Medicine and has held assistant clinical professorships with the Departments of Medicine and Pediatric and Adolescent Medicine. Plus, Dr. Drew has served for over 2 decades as the medical director for chemical dependency services at Los Encinas Hospital, a psychiatric facility in Pasadena, California. But I think Dr. Drew's greatest renown and most endearing characteristic is his habit of telling the truth just as he sees it.
What a great introduction. And it's all true. That's funny that he says that. You know, I swear, I just told you about my father. Let me add this, because it's true, okay? I'm repeating his life all over again, except somehow I've managed to avoid being institutionalized like the way he was always getting institutionalized. I visited him at Lark, which was a place for people to get sober, like usually drunks. It was right by St. Mary's Hospital. I visited him at Tucson Psychiatric Institute over on Wilmot by the Windsong Village apartments I lived at when I was a computer programming developer and when I was trying to have a relationship and be a functional person and experienced heartbreak and was going to college and studying Java programming, object oriented, and like, okay. Oh, and Charter Hospital, I visited him there. Yeah, I visited him at Keno Hospital. That was the place where he had to make a bloody pulpy mess out of somebody. And, you know, I visited him a day or two later and brought a marijuana joint because he was totally stressed out. I snuck it in like contraband and said, hey, old man, I know this is illegal, but Jesus Christ, I know this is one of the only tools you have to cope with this bullshit world we live in. So luckily, I've remained uninstitutionalized because it never helped him. It never helped him. Granted, sometimes maybe it did. Maybe, okay. Like, if you go into a place totally crazy and you come out halfway normal and well-adjusted, fuck, man, I guess it helps. But to have to go back over and over and over again, like you're shampooing your hair, most people don't have to do that. Lately, I have felt so close to the edge. I've thought maybe I should be institutionalized because I don't want to hurt anybody. And I'm so fucking frustrated and at the end of my rope, and I don't know what to do. I look to my old man for strength. I look to my band members for strength. I listen to my music for strength because it's sacred to me and reminds me of what I'm doing in the first place. Like, just trying to make it through the day and trying to make something of my life, you know? So, that was a great introduction. That inspires me to hear all those things about this guy, this dude that I used to watch on MTV hanging out with Adam Carolla. You know, I also liked the Man Show with freaking Adam Carolla and what's that late night talk show host? What's his name? Isn't he like a Jewish dude? Like granted, I don't think he's too religious, but Jimmy Kimmel, right? Right? Yeah, that's the guy. I think, well, whatever the case may be, I think Carolla's an Italian and Kimmel's a Jewish man. I don't really know. I don't really fucking care. I just want some fucking help, because this world offers me no help. Everybody's too busy competing. Come on, Dr. Drew, give me some hope, please. I don't want to hurt anybody, including myself. I don't want to be institutionalized. Give me some options, bro. All right. Hopefully I don't interrupt this anymore. I just have to, because I'm so used to being programmed by garbage. It'd be nice to get some good programming for a change. That would be really great. I could use that. All right. See you in a few.
And so I want to welcome Dr. Drew to the stage to kick us off in our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. Everybody hear me? Yes? I'm sure my directness makes Steve a bit uncomfortable or maybe nervous, but let's see if we can have at it this morning. It is such a privilege to be here. You have no idea how excited I am to be here and present this material to you. I am just one physician. I am just one doctor's perspective on a history that has evolved over the last 50 years. I'm an internist. I arrived at a freestanding psychiatric hospital as a resident, started moonlighting. And when I arrived there, I was witness to the previous 30 years of psychiatry. It was almost like a museum I was entering into, and had to take care of much of the consequences of the excesses of the previous 30 years because it was a mess. I was there for 30 years and saw how psychiatry was evolving. And believe me, it was during some very exciting years when the treatment of brain disorders became exactly that, a treatment of a brain condition, just the way I was used to treating heart conditions, knee conditions, whatever it might be. This is not a different organ. It's unique, but it gets sick like every other organ. But through history, we treated it a little bit differently. And then, much to my chagrin, the last 10 years, I've watched the entire system unravel and decay to the point that I wake up every day upset, mobilized, concerned, freaked out. And I want to share with you a little bit this morning about the history of how we got here. I thought that'd be a great way to kind of kick it off. A lot yet to be said, but if we don't frame this with an understanding of what mistakes we've made, I think we will miss the big picture. I'll be relying heavily on the text of Dr. Torrey's book, American Psychosis, and he very coyly said to me a few minutes ago when I was talking about what a mess this has been, he said, yes, we made a couple of mistakes. And yes, mistakes were made. And unfortunately, because of those mistakes, we become ossified in laws and practices that are between 50 and 60 years old and are anathema to our current understanding of these brain diseases. So let me bring you through this brief history, if you don't mind. So, it's making noises. Maybe I'm going the wrong way. There we go. In 1945, a young psychiatrist by the name of Robert Felix proposed to employ the prestige and resources of the national government to redirect mental health priorities. He was a non-elected official, and this one man was to massively shift the federal government's orientation to mental health. He wanted to create the Neuropsychiatric Institute, and his initiative picks up a momentum after World War II. The director of the Selective Service System testified that mental illness was the greatest cause of loss of manpower. And it became clear in congressional testimony that amongst men rejected, 18% were rejected because of mental illness, 14% of what they called mental retardation at that time, 5% other neurologic disorders, 38% was due to mental disabilities, and that was eye-opening at the time. It was the first time that the government had that data, confronted with that data. So Congress proposed the National Neuropsychiatric Institute, National Mental Health Plan. Its purpose was to provide for, foster, and aid in the coordination of research relating to neuropsychiatric disorders, to establish the National Neuropsychiatric Institute, and for other purposes. Now, this was Dr. Felix's brainchild. Robert Felix was that psychiatrist that showed up in 1945. And he said, championing this bill, I wanted it written in broad language, and the act is broad. There is literally nothing I can't do. Again, a non-elected official running around our government. And once the passage of the act was assured, he changed the name to the National Institute of Mental Health because he wanted to carefully steer this away from anything about mental illness. Because you'll see at the time, the idea of mental illness was something that was stigmatized, it was anathema, and there was a growing consensus, which was bizarre, that institutions created mental illness, caused mental illness. Imagine that. Now, the American Psychiatric Association got involved as well, and they called for a national commission, co-sponsored by a young senator by the name of John Kennedy. Felix was aware that his sister had mental illness, and he began plotting, began figuring out a way he could use President Kennedy for his ends. And the history of Rosemary is a very sad one. It's another story of the excesses of psychiatry at the time. Rosemary, it's not entirely clear what she had, whether it was a psychotic illness or a personality disorder or a substance use disorder. Whatever it was, she was behaving badly, and the Kennedys needed it to stop. Now, Joe Kennedy at the time consulted with throughout the land for the greatest psychiatrist available, and they suggested that they pursue the breakthrough treatment of the time, which was the frontal lobotomy. And the consequence of that, of course, changed this woman permanently. And I would say I've heard that the matriarch of the family really felt worse about this than even the assassination of her sons, killing the individual as we knew her and because of bad behavior. Well, the commission's report was mostly an ideological document when it finally came out. And this is one of the I'm hoping what the takeaways from my lecture today is that when clinicians, and I would argue also politicians, and certainly scientists, develop a position that starts becoming more theological than scientific, run. It is always a disaster. In addition to having had a ringside seat to the decay of our mental health delivery system, I was in the middle of the opioid epidemic, and I saw what happened when pain became the fifth vital sign, when a discipline in medicine decided that pain is whatever the patient says it is, pain control is whatever the patient says it is, and they declared themselves a white hat profession that was going to save poor people from pain. It became theological. I, as somebody who was objecting aggressively because my patients were being killed, not just dying, but being killed by this philosophy, was told I was outdated, I was a dinosaur, I was interested in people suffering. And because the Joint Commission on Hospital Accreditation got involved with it, and the Department of Mental Health and the various state medical societies were on board with pain, the fifth vital sign, the VA, that I was threatened constantly with retribution from various administrative organizations for not, say, when a heroin addict was in the middle of withdrawal, not filling out the little happy signs, not the little happy to sad face, you know.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much pain are you in? Yeah. You know, I was looking for a good point to just say, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, the white hat, good guys, save people from pain thing. You know, the opioids, they basically cause as much pain as they save you from if you are not disciplined enough to handle them with the respect that they deserve. Alright? It takes a high level of discipline to take them and not overtake them. On top of that, it takes a high level of discipline to stick to the program. Because, I mean, there's plenty of times I felt like quitting because I couldn't handle the bullshit. Alright, that's all.
Vital sign sheet that we had to fill out. My patients were always unhappy. They were in drug withdrawal. It was the nature of drug withdrawal. But if I didn't make that better in that moment, I was literally in danger of criminal prosecution for patient abuse for inadequate treatment of pain. If you don't think those prosecutions, and there were many, didn't send shockwaves through my profession, it's why we sent everybody to pain management. We were afraid to manage pain on our own because it was no longer a malpractice issue, it was a criminalized issue. Beware when clinicians, politicians, scientists develop theology and don't remain objective and scientific. So the final report came out, and this was a theological document primarily. They felt they had the following statements and recommendations: with the state mental hospitals were bankrupt beyond remedy. What they based that on was rather spurious, but this was a 100 or 200 year series of developments in the states. The future psychiatric services should be coordinated by something called community mental health centers. Now, do not get me wrong. I am not indicting outpatient or community mental health centers. That, as it was interpreted, became mental health centers that were designed to prevent mental health problems. They wouldn't use the word illness. Preventing mental health issues was something that they had no idea what to do, how to do that back then. I would dare say we have little ability to do it today, but there was almost no directive towards the treatment of psychiatric illness in the outpatient setting. And of course, the federal government would participate. And I would share with you that that was a massive departure. Again, a non-elected official, a professional board, shifting the relationship of the federal government with the states. In previous years, whenever it has been proposed, all the way back to President Pierce, that there be federal funds to deliver health system, mental health delivery, they felt there was no provision in the Constitution. The states should be managing this. It was properly left to the state and the counties. Well, once elected, President Kennedy appointed the Interagency Commission on Mental Health. Remember, this is a very significant issue for him. The committee was tasked with recommendations for the services, and as the only professional on the committee, Robert Felix dominated the proceedings. And along the same time, an unanticipated breakthrough developed, which promised the medicalization of psychiatric illness. Now, in the committee, he was assisted with two NIMH psychiatrists, Stanley Yolis, who would succeed Felix as the director of the NIMH, Bertram Brown, who would succeed Yolis. Yolis apparently made some cracks about, essentially, I believe it was about the old Kentucky farm, the opioid.
That's the National Institute of Mental Health, right?
A opioid treatment center and a research center. It was actually the disease model really grew, one of the disease models, one of the incarnations of the disease model grew out of the Lexington Opiate Center. I'm blanking the name of it for some reason right now. And it was a very interesting place, but there were excesses. And Yolis made some comment about that, and so Brown succeeded him. So what we have is from 1946 to 1970, the mental health policies of the federal government, of our government, was dominated by 3 physicians, okay? And nobody in Kennedy's committee had any experience with the treatment of psychiatric patients with custodial care needs. I wanted to emphasize this. Felix had worked one summer in a Colorado State hospital. That was the extent of his experience with the chronically mentally ill. Brown was originally trained as a pediatrician with a specialization in infectious diseases. He'd briefly visited a couple of state hospitals in Massachusetts. Yolis was a parasitologist who went to medical school. He was at the Federal Narcotics Treatment Center in Lexington, Kentucky, which again was not a place for the chronically mentally ill. It was a place where people could go as opposed to prison if they were an opiate addict and be essentially the object of experiments, but also get treatment. He had literally never set foot in a state hospital, and these men were charged with determining the destiny of resources which had been maintained by the states for hundreds of years. At the same time, our culture had run amok. The Myth of Mental Illness was published in '61. He claimed mental illness did not exist. I dare say Robert Felix adopted this as a philosophy. We had philosophers like Goffman arguing that mental illness was the consequence of institutionalization. Again, these three men agreed with Goffman. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in 1962 came around, and Robert Marbach, I promised him, he's of course the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness with us today, and he allowed me to use his rhetoric around One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He said, our country watched this and thought they were watching a documentary. They were watching a fictionalized account, a movie about an imaginary institution. And then things like publications like in Science, Dr. Rosenhan's On Being Sane in Insane Places, where he took, this is the kind of boundary problems that was going all the time. He took a bunch of, I think it was Swarthmore students, and had them pretend to be patients and go in the hospital. And then, and by the way, the whole thing probably, not the whole thing. Let's say there were narrative excesses, dramatic narrative excesses in his original paper and his subsequent documentation of what happened. It's the equivalent of me taking a group of medical students, having them drink blood, go to the ER, vomit blood, and then criticize the ER staff for behaving as though somebody was having a GI bleed. That's literally what they did. So, I'm obviously upset about this. I'll show you some more excesses as we go.
I appreciate that he's upset about it, personally.
In October '63, President Kennedy signed the Community Mental Health Centers legislation that put the state mental hospitals on the course of extinction. That was the purpose of that. However, no plan on what to do with the discharged patients, no plan for dealing with the resistant care patients. Rather, as I told you, that legislation was focused on prevention. And what the evidence at the time showed that the available interventions on prevention had no effect or, in fact, made things worse. And, of course, we have the, there we go, the so-called IMD exclusion. This has had a continued and massive effect on the ability to care for patients with custodial care need. I call on this administration, please, I know that it's underway, look hard at the IMD exclusion. There's something there that would make a massive difference. So because there were no resources and no plan, the patients were pouring out of the state hospitals by the hundreds of thousands, and they were going to nursing homes, prisons, the streets, and death. Those were the four potential outcomes. And at the same time, we have decisions regarding the grounds for the treatment of the mentally ill. 1964, we had a decision here that the need for treatment prior to that had been the patient needs care, need for care. Group of physicians decide this guy, now look, again, excesses. There were excesses as a result of, I'm not defending need for care, but we went overnight from need for care to harm to self or other as the justification for bringing somebody with a serious illness into a hospital. Overnight. There's a giant distance we can close a little bit. 72, another decision, harm to.
Isn't it interesting how Dr. Drew has helped so many people? He's basically absorbed their illnesses, but at the same time, he can remain like, he can keep his composure because he's a professional. He's not an amateur. He's not a professional amateur. He's a professional. I find that impressive. I wish I could do that. I'd have my shit together if I could do that.
For other, the only justification, and the ACLU got involved saying the goal should be nothing less than the abolition of involuntary hospitalization. That is like saying when my patients become encephalopathic, they're in respiratory distress, their oxygen saturation levels are dropping below 80, their brain doesn't work. Well, we can't involuntarily do anything with that patient because they don't want it. They didn't tell me they want it. And of course, fiscally conservative state governments, not so unhappy with this. Civil rights attorneys were very happy. Nobody with any clinical judgment for this group was representing this group. And we're talking about millions of people. And finally, because the community mental health centers, which people say had been inadequately funded, I would say the entire structure and philosophy was flawed. President Kennedy in '81 finally closed these centers and block granted the money back to the states. They had been an abject failure. Abject failure. And quoting from Dr. Torrey's book, this is a closing chapter appropriately summarized by this psychiatrist. With the knowledge that the state hospitals required 100 years to achieve their maximum size, the precipitous attempt to move large numbers of their charges into settings that in fact did not exist must be seen as incompetent at best and criminal at worst. Now, what we are up against, in addition to this history, which was ill-advised, is now a series of ossified laws that were put in place in the 70s. Things like in California, our Lanterman-Petra Short Act, which affords no consistency in treatment. This was a task force that suggested that untreated mental illness remain a feeder to the state's jail and prison system. ERs will be the dumping ground, and city streets will be an open-air asylum where people with mental illness are brutally victimized and die. Lanterman-Petra's Short Act maintains the silent genocide on our streets. If you are so severely mentally ill,
sorry, I just have to reiterate, genocide is the right word. It is.
that you can be held against your will, and believe me, that requires only the most severe states of psychosis. If you say, I'm going to kill myself or somebody else, and you end up in the ER and then finally on a 72-hour hold, which is how we do it in California, if you then say 4 hours later, you know what, I've thought better of it, if you can answer the next two questions, do you know how to get food? Yeah, McDonald's is across the street. Do you have a place to live? My tent's over there on Reseda. That's it. Out. No treatment, no assessment, no ability to determine what the probabilities of future success are with your care. You can just go. The idea, well, it's just that our civil rights have outweighed the self-evident need for treatment. Families are left desperate. I've worked with state senators in California. We've gone up with family. Please let us help our homeless loved one. We have doctors. We have a bed. We have money. We have places for them to live and sleep and eat. Help us get them home so we can treat them. And we're told by Sacramento to take a hike. Who do you think you are? Desperate. There's resources for these people, and they are dying in the LA County area at the rate of 3 a day. My question is to my friends and colleagues and representatives in Los Angeles and California, what does the body count need to be? What is the body count before you give up crazy ideas like building 4 walls will treat mental illness? This is the current policy that we're pursuing in California, is that if we just have housing, it will end. Somewhere between 60 and 85% of the patients are resistant. The vast majority have serious mental illness and drug addiction, and 4 walls are not going to do anything if they would even go in. I was working with an LA County Board of Supervisors who was touting that he had put out a bank of showers for people. And I said, really, how'd that work out? He said, well, it was tough because on average, it took 14 contacts to get one person into 1 shower. It's in the mental illness. It's a serious condition. Now, what this is at its core, the symptom that we are managing is something called anosognosia. Okay? Anosognosia is a deficit of self-awareness a condition in which a person with disability is unaware of having it. It was first named by Joseph Babinski. You clinicians in here, famous neurologist at the turn of the century, the Babinski sign, which is something when you're doing a neuro exam as a medical student, is the very first thing you're taught about. Babinski noticed this and characterized the term anosognosia. We as clinicians see it all the time in stroke. If somebody has a right cortical stroke, the left side of the body goes out, and the patient doesn't know it. Literally, you can show the patient your hand, it flops over, they'll go, huh, whatever that is. Anyway, the same condition develops in dementia. We rush in. We would be considered inhuman not to rush in on behalf of demented patients with anosognosia. They don't have insight into what's happening to them. Encephalopathy, a medical condition, causes the brain not to work. All right, stay away from me, I don't want help. Inhuman. But when the same condition, the same symptom evolves in the setting of a psychiatric illness, we privilege it in the law. We privilege it. And we protect the patient, we protect that symptom from allowing us to get at the patient to prevent them from dying. Drug addicts get anosognosia. Manic psychosis, anosognosia. Schizophrenics, anosognosia. It's the same biology as in dementia and encephalopathy and other brain conditions, and yet we privilege it in the law, and people are dying. What does the body count need to be? What does it need to be before we will try something a little different, closing the gap between harm to self or other and need for care? Yes, there were excesses under need for care. Yes, the pendulum swung back and there was grave concerns about what psychiatrists were doing. They were maniacs. They were taking ice picks out of their coat pocket in their shirt sleeves and doing lobotomies as their great intervention. I took care of those patients 30 years later. Trust me, it was a mess. This was not a good form of treatment. Yes, some of those hospitals were not in great condition. They were underfunded, understaffed. Not good. But we put in place laws and systems and allowed things to happen 60s or almost 60 years ago. And in those 60 years, we have developed some better understanding of these brain conditions, some better ability to treat them, armies of professionals now that are well equipped to help us, except that symptom is privileged by the law, so we can't do anything. If people go, I don't understand what you're talking about, I'm fine. How about, I have a suggestion. How about, this was proposed to me a couple days ago, and I thought, this is brilliant. This would get around all of the problems. I'd love to change the laws, and I'm working on it. And
I'm not entirely sure what Dr. Drew was suggesting there. Is he saying that if people are vulnerable and not completely aware of, if they're not totally like cognizant or whatever, that what? Their freedom or what? I don't even know, man. I'm sorry. I'd have to analyze that last little part to really know what that was about. But for the most part, he's been spot on, I think.
We all need to, there's a lot to be done. And we'll be talking about that further today. But why not an advance directive for psychiatric care? When somebody is diagnosed with a serious mental illness, why can't we pull out something like what we have in California, the POST form? It's a template that goes, if my brain isn't working, if I'm having the...
You know what? Fuck the legal ramifications of bullshit. How about we just work on the medical shit? All right? Wannabe lawyer boy. God, this is the kind of shit that pisses me off. The guy needs to just dude, you're not a Renaissance man. You're a specialist. You're a medical gift from God, but leave the other shit alone, please. Thank you. You're just gonna sound like a windbag when you talk. But I know he's trying to appeal to the politicians that are falling asleep in the audience, because he knows that there is no change that is going to occur from all of this knowledge sharing. Because why would there be? That's not how the system works. It's frustrating. It's enough to make a person go postal.
following conditions. This is what I want you to do on my behalf. Same thing as advance directive for medical care, right? When somebody is in an ICU and they can't, their brain isn't working right, we have directives what to do. We should have the same thing with psychiatry. We should have that. Every psychiatrist should have it, in general practitioners too, primary care people, should have a template that says, you know what, we have your advance directive for healthcare. If you go into a serious medical crisis, let's get your advance directive for psychiatric care. When your brain stops working, which I'm sorry, it's a high probability of that with your condition. I want to be sure to get you back in and back to work and back to where you can thrive. Thriving is the final goal.
You know, in a world that has assassins, making things like advance directives is kind of stupid. I'd rather donate everything I own to Goodwill. Alright, maybe I'll put that in my advance directive. You know? It's like, leave the law to the lawyers, dude. Like, I don't want to submit my legal right as a singular entity to anyone or anything. And if I end up assassinated, yeah, just give all my shit away to the poor, please. Because I got some okay stuff. Some of it's worth money. Like, you're not gonna fucking get me to sign away my life and then kill me and take away my life in the form of my material belongings. Like, this is the kind of things that lawyers deal with. Alright, let's stick to solving the mental illness so we don't get to the point where people are going postal and winding up dead. Death by cop, death by fucking... Jesus Christ, man. Can't we do something? Most of his lecture right here, I call it a lecture because it's a one-way information thing. It's like, put your keyboard down and just listen. Because there's a lot of good ideas. Okay? But, you know, whatever, man. For whatever reason, people don't listen to good ideas. I don't know why.
Here. And let's remind ourselves, the dementia and the encephalopathy, well, dementia particularly. Dementia is an inexorable progressive condition that we cannot change. And yet we jump in on that one. Schizophrenia, when they manifest anosognosia, if we don't intervene, we are condemning them to future deterioration and the possibility of being irretrievable with a treatable disease whose course can be changed dramatically with early intervention. So the disease that we can actually change the course of, we privilege anosognosia, and the disease for which it's inexorable, well, that one we jump all over. How crazy is that? We must change this. We got to change it, and that's why we're here today. It has been a profound privilege to speak this morning. I look forward to the panels and the commentary. Dr. Corey, I am indebted to you for your book, American Psychosis. If you want to see that history in detail, read his book. It's all there. And with that, we will move on with our panels. Thank you.
Not bad.
Wonderful. We're now going to be moving to our first panel discussion, focus on the need for reform. Our first moderator will be Dr. Ellie McCants-Katz. She is the Assistant Secretary and Administrator
you know what?
Substance Abuse.
I'd like to listen. I don't have the time to waste. Whoever this person is, they might have something good to say, but they haven't earned my trust. Like Dr. Drew has. I can relate to the guy because he has great genius ideas. And yet at the same time, he gets a bit emotional because of all the trauma and suffering and tragedy he's witnessed. He's got some post-traumatic stress for his own, I can tell. You know, he wants to help, and sometimes you just can't help. And then you end up with another little bit of PTSD to put on the pile. Hey, what do you think of my gloves? I think I got them finally situated. They're a little wobbly, my spikes. They're a little wobbly, but I think if I had to throw a punch, it would deter an assailant. Know what I mean?
because I don't want to get into a fight. It's about the very last fucking thing I want to do. I just want you to agree with me. And I'm not trying to be a tyrant. I'm more like a defensive fucking nerd that's just like, not in the face, not in the face. And if you punch me in my face, I can put up my spikes like that, and you'll be the one hurting yourself. Granted, I don't want to get pushed in the face like that, because that would suck. But, you know, ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, why don't you punch my face? I got some spikes for your fist, you moron. That's like the kind of opposition that I am accustomed to. And I'm pretty sure Dr. Drew is accustomed to some opposition himself. And, you know, just because the guy acts a little bit off the hinge, it's because he cares. Don't make him focus on legal matters. I don't want to hear Dr. Drew talking about what was it? I forget. I try to forget that the will. Let's just call it a will, okay? Because that's what he's talking about. He's talking about a will and testament. You know? Whatever that word is that I can't remember, that I don't want to think about, that bothers me. Yeah, man. I don't want to hear him talk about that ever again. I just want to hear him talk about, like, recovery and health and, like, you know, the exact things that he specializes in. He's talking about, like, organs and how they fail. And how the brain is an organ like any other organ, right? And it seems like he has spent a gargantuan, an ungodly, I don't know, man. What does that even mean, ungodly? Amount of time? He's dedicated a lot of himself to fixing a problem that we are suffering from right now at this moment. And the freaking New York Times... I know we took in that article about like the meth and the opioids, the stimulants and the downers. Yeah, the speedballers. What did that lady say? It's hard for me to listen to it because she has such tonality to her voice. I regret not using my text-to-speech plugin because hearing her endearing emotional state, like, it influences me in ways that are not necessarily the avenues that I choose to go down. And it becomes an internal struggle trying to decipher the data from the emotions. Because though she wants to alleviate the suffering, the author of that article, she is merely a journalist. She is not a doctor. She is not a law enforcement officer. She is just a journalist. So I don't need your fucking tonality. I need some neutrality so I can have some objectivity. Because I am an individual. And I can't have objectivity when I am influenced by your tonality. Thank you very much. I wish I would have used what's my text-to-speech preference? Is it David? I know it's not Alex. Unfortunately, I don't know who came up with these names. Hey, what did you think of Dr. Drew trying to work his PowerPoint when he was all like, wait, oh, there it is. Did that make him look like a professional? A professional amateur? Yeah, I regrettably admit that I am basically a member of the information technologies, computer science, I'm part of the people that contributed to your looking like a fuck up, Dr. Drew. I'm a part of that group. I mean, I didn't specifically contribute to your looking like a fuck up in front of some of the most important leaders at the time a few years ago. you know, but like, I've never worked for Microsoft. I've actually been like highly opposed to them my whole life. I have like a little doll up there that's like a Bill Gates hanging from a noose. My ex-fiance gave me that. I don't know where she got it. I guess some anarchist collective. I tend to hang out with punks. But, what about it? Yeah, sorry, Dr. Drew. My computer programming brethren failed you, 'cause they suck sometimes. But, you know, debugging is hard work. It's kind of like debugging a human mind, right? Is that hard work, Dr. Drew? I can't relate, 'cause I've never debugged a human mind. I'm thinking my mind could use some debugging. Not reprogramming. I don't want any mind control and neuro-linguistic programming. Yeah, I told you guys I hung out with Walter Bower. I know the difference between reprogramming and helping to soothe an illness. I can tell the difference. I've seen my father suffer the worst kind of fucking trauma of all. A traumatized mind. I've seen Walter, and by the way, they met one time, and my father didn't like him. Granted, I also found this one videotape where Walter and my mom were like, hey, wait, what? You know what? I considered my father and Walter to be influential on my upbringing, my ability to comprehend what is good for me and what is bad for me. And I think Dr. Drew is for the most part good for me, except for the fact when he has to conform and try to like meet your standards of what a surgeon general is supposed to be. You know, what is that? Why is he talking about those will and documents? Like, it's weird. It's weird, right? Let's watch the next video, please. I'm pretty much done talking about myself. That's for damn sure. Uh-oh. I think I gotta subscribe to this. Can't I watch Fox News videos? Come on, man. Let me see this. I want to see it. Show it to me. Come on, Fox News. You can do it, right? You're not totally backdoored by Rupert Murdoch? Okay, it looks like it's gonna load. I'm gonna shut up.
There's all these pressures. Pain becomes the fifth vital sign, as if pain is on par with pulse and respiration, all the respiratory system and all this stuff, and when really it is not. It is not a vital sign. You cannot measure pain objectively the way you can your pulse. Pain is different for you as is for me. And so all of this, there's all these pressures on doctors. Plus, I have to say that one of the crucial pressures was from us, American health consumers, all of us. We wanted quick, we wanted easy, we wanted doctors to fix us.
I remember doing reviews in the 90s and 2000s where the reviewer would come in and first they would ask, they'll see your vital signs, where's the pain assessment? As though pulse, if your pulse was 0, that was barely as important as whether you assessed the pain scale for that individual patient. It was insane. It actually put rocket fuel into the prescribing of opiates. So the idea that it was a pharmaceutical company's nefarious influence, they were duplicitous, but it was my profession through and through that caused this thing. And it was a quasi-religious ideology that grabbed a whole field of medicine, and they got involved with the medical organizations, with the review organizations, with the attorneys. Doctors were being sued civilly and criminally for reckless negligence for inadequate treatment of pain. This all sent shudders through medicine.
From every direction, we were hearing that if you're an enlightened doctor, you're going to be different from those puritanical doctors of the past. you'll recognize that opioids are a gift from Mother Nature and should be used for just about any complaint of pain. And as we responded to this brilliant marketing campaign disguised as education, and the prescribing took off, it led to a public health catastrophe.
Interesting. I guess I would have to completely agree. It's not necessarily a blessing for Mother Nature. It's more like a balanced kind of approach, well, that's how you handle that blessing. It's not really, it's a blessing and a curse, much like Adrian Monk says on the Monk TV show. He says that his gift, right, his gift of being able to look at a crime scene and figure it out with his disease of obsessive compulsive disorder, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Which my friend Bill Almec, he really liked that TV show. He thought it was like a blessing. A curse? I don't know, man. You know, it's all about finding abilities in disabilities. Oh, that was a show Bill produced, wasn't it? With Beth Fitzgerald, Will Almec, Beth Fitzgerald. Abilities and disabilities. Oh, blessing and curse. Obsessive compulsive disorder. How's about obsessive compulsive? What's the opposite word of disorder? Order? I don't know. Obsessive compulsive blessing? It's a blessing and a curse, really. Yeah, no shit, right? Funny. I don't think I found anything. Hey, did I click on this one? This is not a video. This is just some bullshit newspaper shit. I'd have to have my plugin read aloud to you again. Like, are you in the mood for having a computerized voice that seems to be patronizing you, even though as it patronizes you, it is enlightening you? Who's in the mood for that, right? You know what? I gotta take a leak. I'll check you guys later. I hope I have seriously contributed to, like, understanding what you people consider to be a problem. It's not a problem to be dealt with. It's people to be helped. I'll check you later. Okay? If you feel like helping me, just go buy some records. Go to Bandcamp and buy some of my shit. If you want to help me, I'll know what to do with the money. I'll probably get my back fixed with some regenerative medicine, some stem cells from my plasma, and QC Kinetic